Good morning. For the benefit of our radio and video listening audience, I want to say that we just watched a video which anyone can watch on their own. It's from the YouTube channel masdaily, N-A-S daily. Now, Nas in Arabic means people. And it is also the name of the YouTuber who makes videos explaining how traveling can change us because it introduces us to a larger world view. And a larger world view can mean that I allow into my thinking and my consideration things that already exist. For example, diversity. It's something that already exists. There is absolutely nothing you can do about it. It's a fact of life. However, I may not notice diversity if I stay in the small world of the village of my own mind. I may not notice diversity if I stick with people who are exactly like me and agree with me. I may not notice diversity as the way of things if I'm trying to make everyone and everything be the same and fit into boxes. What I will discover is that diversity cannot be eliminated from life. And the more I try to eliminate it, ignore it, not deal with it, control it, the more frustrated I will become. So I guess, saying, I believe in diversity is kind of like saying, I believe in breathing oxygen. Well, okay. It's not really a negotiable point. I can't say, you know what, I don't believe in breathing oxygen. I mean, I could, but it's pointless. These are already accomplished facts. Breathing oxygen and diversity and many other things. We just get to deal with it. It's the way of the creative genius of the universe. Tracy Brown is the chair of our leadership council in our whole national movement. And she says diversity is not the problem. It's the stories we tell about diversity that are the problems. Well, what are the stories that society, culture, that we tell about such things as differentness and diversity, the ones that are under the radar? Let's look at what happened a couple of weeks ago. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, successfully sued Facebook for letting real estate brokers use personal data to hide housing ads from people of color. In other words, people's housing choices were being limited based on their race, their gender, their religion, and all sorts of differences. Maybe that's one of the problematic stories that we tell about diversity. Maybe, it's under the surface, but it goes something like this. We need to build a society that is uniform and predictable, because that's comfortable. We need to build a society that matches my preferences, because that's good. The thing is that when we put our effort into building comfort and sameness and uniformity, the natural order of diversity pushes back. And whatever we build up in the name of conformity collapses. There is a story in the Bible about this. It's the story of the Tower of Babel. I was in Portland last week with my family, and we went to the Center for Spiritual Living up there in Lake Oswego for Sunday services. Thought we'd go to church while we were there. They do things differently there. Their service is 1.5 hours long. Yeah, you know. We cannot collaborate with those people. There's just too much difference. I mean, it's a joke, right? But the sad part of it that's not funny is actually that's what's happening in our nation. In reality, I felt expanded by the differences, and inspired by them. And I walked around the social hall up there, and I picked up all of the pamphlets and brochures and announcements about how they do things so that we could be expanded in our worldview by those differences, enriched by them. The minister up there, Dr. David Alexander, he gave a stirring message about the Tower of Babel, and it reminded me of what happens when we get all busy trying to make things and people behave and be the same. Here's how it goes. After the flood in Noah's days, and if you know that story, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't know the story of Noah's flood, think of it as like the big reset by creation. The reset button starts everything over again, and you'd think after that, everything would be okay. But no. Here's how it says it in Genesis. Now, the whole earth used the same language and the same words, and it came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. Now, the way of reading the Bible stories is you have to look for the meaning and the symbols in it. What's happening is one of Noah's grandsons, Nimrod, is leading his people eastward toward a land called Shinar to settle. They want to settle in a plain. It's like a valley between two rivers that do not meet. So already we've got stuff to pay attention to here. Number one, you've got to notice the people want to settle down. Because people prefer to be settled, not disturbed. They prefer to be comfortable. That's the first thing. And the second thing to notice is that the place that they settle is this plain, this valley between two rivers that do not intersect. They do not mix. See, we can take that as a symbol of separation. So we can say they settled in a place of separation. They got comfy there. They got to a place where good and evil, right and wrong, and this and that, and us and them is clearly defined. Do you know any places like that? Well, let's see what happens to the comfy people in the plains of Shinar. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used bricks for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." All right, let's keep on looking for the meaning. What does it mean? What could it possibly mean to make a brick as a metaphor? Well, here's an example. Think of something that is clearly formed, very defined, that we use to build other things with. Like a definition, like a category, like a box to put things and people into according to where they belong. Like this is this and that is that. And then once it is settled, I'll never change it. In fact, I will bake it thoroughly so that it is hard like stone. And then I'll use those definitions to build a case for how things should be. And I'll put an end to all of the scattered thinking and everybody just doing whatever they want to do. Or a nation or a society, same thing. Let's get our definitions together, and then we'll get close, so close to supreme knowledge that we won't even need the divine mystery anymore. because we will practically be all powerful. We will say what gender is. We will say what marriage is. We will say what everything is. And we won't pay no mind to what actually is. We will have eliminated the paradox of the mystery of life. Oh, when I heard the story being retold, I thought to myself, oh no. I think we're living in the land of Shinar all over again. We've settled on the plane of separation. Now if we can just get everyone to vote the same way, then we won't need the mystery of the unknown. We won't have to tolerate the ambiguous. We won't have to include those others. Because we will be all powerful. We will have made a name for ourselves, whatever that name is, Democrat, Republican, progressive, this, that. And then we can eliminate the inconvenience of people who disagree. Do you know that you can't do that in relationship? When you're having a relationship with someone, you're going to have to learn about differences. If you are in a relationship, one of the things Kevin and I learned in relationship is that when we disagree, we have options. We can retreat into our corner of rightness to get our own way, or we can negotiate. Something that feels more like a win-win. We can negotiate a solution that feels more like inclusion of more. Here are some terms to consider. Diversity is the reality of life, of relationship, of society, of nations. And inclusivity is the practice of opening myself up to it beyond the village of my own mind. And the stumbling block, the challenge, the place where I fall down is where I'm pulled to being comfortable. And quite possibly, the cure might be curiosity. And we're going to come back to this in a moment, because first I would like to confess. I like to be comfortable. Don't you? I confess, I like things to be just the way that I like them. I've spent half a century getting my life just so. And then along comes Kevin with his little dog and his loud music and his opinions and his ideas and his ways. Maybe that's why I'm teaching the class in May, Embracing Change. It's for me. I gotta learn to do that, because don't you know, the moment you get the pattern down is when it changes. Why? Because maybe the divine reality is diversity. And if you're not one for taking classes, you can consider our diversity discussion group. It takes place today. It's open to anyone. It's free, 1:30. And that's a place where you can explore what is the journey of someone who comes to a conclusion that is vastly different to mine. Have you ever met somebody whose conclusion is vastly different to yours? Yeah. Let's leave politics alone for a moment. Let's leave race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality. Let's leave that alone for a moment, and let's talk about essential oils. It's important. Yes, essential oils, aromatherapy, Because when Kevin and I met, I did not think that was going to be able to, I don't think that was going to work. You see, because he studied the English school of essential oils, and I come from the French school, and the two of them, like the rivers in China, do not intersect. And one of them is right, according to both sides. I mean, I remember that one day early on, we really got into it, Ooh, I can even feel the anxiety in my body now as I was thinking about it. We got into a very intense discussion on the correct use of essential oils. And I remember thinking to myself, this is a fundamental and irreconcilable difference. And I can imagine he was probably thinking, what an idiot, But even so, I can remember myself thinking, he has to be shown the light. I've got to convince him. I mean, why for God's sake would anybody think like that? Have you ever found yourself in that space? About important things? I have. And I know in those moments when my goal is to get other people to surrender to my way of thinking, what I'm really doing is I'm not trying to understand. I am baking bricks to build a tower so that I can be as good as God in my righteousness. But the story of Babel will tell us that you and I can be sure that every brick, every solid brick of conformity that I bake will crumble. And every pattern you and I insist on will have exceptions. And everything that you think is so and solid, someone else thinks isn't. And everything you feel in the core of your being, someone feels differently. Since I'm confessing, do you know that I used to have a very clear opinion about couples with a large age difference between them? Awkward. You might say it was a very well-baked opinion. You might have called me judgmental and you would have been correct. Felt quite righteous about it. And then I met Kevin, and turns out there's a really big age difference between us. So there's that. So I contacted one of my colleagues that I respect, Dr. David Alt. You know him. He's been here many times. And it's so funny. I said to him, this is how I came. I said, Dr. David Alt, I'm not sure that the community is going to be okay with it. Don't you like that? I'm projecting it on the community so I don't have to own it. But, he sees right through me. He's like, are you okay with it? And he said, besides, why would you want to be in a community that is not okay with it? So, you see, he was really bringing me to a larger worldview by helping me own that I was building a case out of bricks from my definitions. Well, back to the story, because what happens next is fascinating, And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which they had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse the language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Well, it sounds like the Lord took it personally and panicked. Sounds like the Almighty was being petty, which is not consistent with the nature of the all-knowing power of the universe. So we must look for a deeper meaning in it. We've got to look into it. And the meaning is right in there. It's right, hidden right in plain sight in the language. Did you notice it said, come, let us? The plural. Oh, we can take that as a sign, as a symbol, that the voice of God is revealing the many contained within the one and saying diversity is the divine reality, and everything that is built up in the name of conformity gets to meet the reality of diversity, and guess which one wins? So the Lord said, come, let us. Let the reality of diversity confuse the uniformity. Why? Why make them speak all the different language? Why confuse the people with so many differences among them? Well, here's one possible idea to consider. Because the divine hears the intention of our hearts and then provides the exact curriculum to fulfill it. The exact path to accomplish it. And the intention of the people, earlier you heard, was to reach and know the divine as themselves. So the divine said, okay, here is how you do it. You want to know me? Get to know each other in your differences, because that is where I am. And then you will discover that oneness is not the sameness. Do you know that the Quran answers the question, why did the Almighty create us with so many differences, so many nations, so many tribes? Why? By saying this, that ye may know each other, not that you may despise each other. And Tracy Brown, that we heard from earlier, she also said that ignoring this beauty and the value of uniqueness of the different types of people is like ignoring the way God shows up as humanity. And we don't do that with dogs, or flowers, or trees, or clouds, or spices, or food, or art. So why would we do it with humans and ethnicities and genders and religions? And here is how our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, said it. It's very beautiful. He said, behind all is a unity, and through all is a diversity, and saturating all is a divinity. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Behind all is a unity, and through all is a diversity, and saturating all is a divinity. Now, I said we'd get back to those definitions, so here they are again. Diversity is the reality, like breathing oxygen, that I get to deal with. And inclusivity is the practice of going with the flow of what actually is. And the setbacks, the downfall, the challenge to being in that flow is my pull towards the comfort of predictability and sameness. And curiosity might well be the cure. Now, after Easter, which is next week, when the One Heart Choir is going to be singing, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to, the following week, look at those parts. We're going to look at what is the practice of inclusivity like, by asking the question, did you know that diversity can be present? It can exist in a community even without there being a practice of inclusivity. You can separate yourself in your mind from it. So we're going to look at how can curiosity help guide me so that I can become interested in the journey of people whose conclusions are radically different from my own. That's going to be fun. So last night, we had a beautiful community Seder. Reverend Tara Steele and all of volunteers were wonderful. And Rabbi George and Rabbi Stephanie from Shomrei Torah were here. It was absolutely beautiful. And they said to me, we feel so at home here. which is a fulfillment of our vision to be welcoming to people of different faiths, So last night, we were Jewish. Next week, we're going to be full-on Christian. All the way. No holds barred. I'm serious. And then the week after, I have no idea what we'll be. And I mention it because this is the center for spiritual living that you are building. And I thank you for that. So let's take a moment to breathe in. Let your eyes close as we take a moment to acknowledge that unity that is behind all life, that expresses itself as a diversity of forms, and it itself is the divinity that saturates all life. That is who I am, who we are, where I live, and what I am doing. I am expressing the unity, diversity, and divinity of all life, all at the same time. And so, by way of this prayer, then, I am inviting my own mind to expand beyond the borders of my own mental village so that I may see more of what is true in this world. And I know that as I plant this seed of inclusivity and acceptance, I am doing something wonderful for this world. I give thanks in advance for the goodness that comes when people embrace each other, the planet, and all beings. And together we say, and so it is.